Anatoly Moskvin seemed like an ordinary man, at least on the surface. He lived in Nizhny Novgorod, a city some 250 miles east of Moscow. Highly educated, he spoke 13 languages. He was a philologist, someone who studies language in written historical sources. Moskvin was considered an expert on cemeteries. He even wrote a book on the subject.
But I harbored a dark secret, a morbid fascination that would make me one of the most chilling figures in criminal history. My interest in death wasn't just academic. I was drawn to it, captivated by its mystery and ritual.
His apartment was crammed with books on history, linguistics, and the occult. Scattered among them were artifacts of death skulls, bones, and macabre trinkets. He was a regular visitor to cemeteries, not just to study them, but to connect with the dead in some way. He would wander among the tombstones, reading inscriptions, and even attending funerals of those he didn't know.
My parents, unaware of the darkness growing in my heart, dismissed my eccentricities as harmless quirks of a brilliant mind. They had no idea that my fascination was growing into a horrifying obsession, one that would soon lead me to cross the line from respectful observer to grave robber.
This seemingly harmless scholar was about to become a monster, forever known as the dollmaker of Nizhny Novgorod. Nizhny Novgorod, a sprawling city on the Volga River, was more than just Moskvin's home. It was his hunting ground. The city boasted numerous cemeteries, some ancient and sprawling, others small and forgotten. These cemeteries became Moskvin's open-air libraries. He would spend hours wandering through them, meticulously documenting the inscriptions on the tombstones, researching their histories and sketching their layouts. He wasn't simply interested in the names and dates. Moskvin sought to understand the lives lived, the stories behind the weathered stone. He was particularly drawn to the graves of children, their innocence and tragedy resonating deeply with him. He would sit by their graves, whispering to the spirits, leaving small trinkets, and even sleeping beside their final resting places. His obsession with cemeteries and death rituals was no secret. He was often seen attending funerals, a somber figure lurking at the back, his eyes filled with an unsettling intensity. He would listen intently to the eulogies, committing details to memory, as if trying to absorb the essence of the departed. His behavior, while strange, was not yet criminal. No one suspected that beneath Moskvin's scholarly facade lurked a horrifying secret. A compulsion that would soon turn these cemeteries from places of mourning into his own twisted hunting grounds. As Moskvin's obsession grew, so did his boldness. He began to spend his nights in cemeteries, not just visiting, but trespassing, scaling fences and walls. He was no longer content with simply observing the rituals of death. He craved a deeper connection, a more tangible link to the deceased. His fascination was morphing into something darker, a desire to control death, to possess it. He started by taking small mementos from graves, buttons, toys, lockets. He saw these items as imbued with the spirits of the departed, talismans connecting him to the afterlife. His apartment became a macabre museum filled with these stolen relics, each one a testament to his growing obsession.
The whispers started soon after. We reported hearing strange noises coming from Moskvin's apartment, chanting, singing, and what sounded like conversations. Some of us claimed to have seen flickering lights and shadowy figures moving within. His once respected scholarly persona was being replaced by whispers of the strange man who spoke to the dead.
Unbeknownst to his neighbors, Moskvin's activities were about to take a horrific turn. His desire to possess the dead, to control them, was about to manifest in the most gruesome and shocking way imaginable. The harmless trinkets were no longer enough. He craved more, and he knew exactly where to find it. In the fall of 2011, Russian police received a tip that would shake the city of Nizhny Novgorod to its core. The parents of Anatoly Moskvin had returned to their apartment after an extended trip. What they found inside was a scene straight out of a horror movie. The apartment, already cluttered with his books and artifacts, was now home to a collection far more sinister.
Scattered throughout the apartment, dressed in brightly colored clothing, were life-size dolls. But these were no ordinary playthings. The dolls had a strange, unsettling weight to them. Their faces, painted with a disturbingly lifelike quality, seemed to stare blankly ahead. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air.
The police, alerted by Moskvin's parents, arrived to investigate. As they began to examine the dolls more closely, they made a horrifying discovery. These were not dolls at all. They were the mummified corpses of young girls, meticulously dressed and posed by Anatoly Moskvin. They were the missing daughters, sisters, and friends of families who had long ago given up hope of ever seeing their loved ones again. Section 5. A House of Horrors. The discovery of the mummified bodies sent shockwaves through the community. People watched in horror as police, clad in hazmat suits, carried corpse after corpse out of Moskvin's apartment. The macabre collection numbered 29 in total, each one a testament to Moskvin's gruesome handiwork and twisted psyche. The apartment itself was a scene of unimaginable horror. The bodies, in various states of preservation, were found seated on shelves, tucked into corners, even propped up at the kitchen table. Some were dressed in frilly dresses, others in costumes. Their faces were painted with makeup, their hair adorned with ribbons and bows. Notes, diagrams, and maps littered the walls, detailing Moskvin's methods for exhuming and preserving the bodies. Alongside these were his bizarre musings on the occult, instructions for reanimating the dead, and lists of cemeteries he planned to target next. The meticulously kept records painted a chilling picture of a man who was not merely content with stealing the dead, but who sought to control them, to shape them in his own image. Section 6. The Dolls of Death. As the police delved deeper into Moskvin's apartment, the full extent of his depravity became horrifyingly clear. Each doll was meticulously crafted. He had exhumed the bodies, some buried for years, and painstakingly preserved them using a combination of chemicals, salt, and desiccant. He would then dress the bodies in children's clothing, apply makeup, and even insert music boxes into their chests to give them the illusion of life. Moskvin kept detailed diaries filled with chilling accounts of his grave-robbing expeditions, his interactions with the bodies, and his attempts to communicate with their spirits. He named each of his victims, creating elaborate backstories and personalities for them. He would often talk to them, sing to them, and even celebrate their birthdays, all the while seemingly oblivious to the grotesque nature of his actions. In his twisted mind, these were not corpses, but his children. He believed that through his knowledge of the occult, through a combination of black magic and scientific know-how, he could one day bring them back to life. He saw himself as a protector, a savior, rescuing these sleeping beauties from their eternal slumber. His actions, however, revealed a terrifying truth. Anatoly Moskvin was not a protector, but a predator, a man driven by his own twisted desires and delusions who had violated the sanctity of death and the memory of the innocent. Section 7. Unveiling the Necromancer. The investigation into Moskvin's crimes revealed a complex and deeply disturbing psychological profile. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that can manifest in hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. Experts believe that Moskvin's obsession with death, combined with his schizophrenia, created a perfect storm that led him down a path of unspeakable horror.
Moskvin himself claimed that his fascination with death began in childhood. He vividly recalled attending the funeral of a young girl when he was just 13 years old. He was forced to kiss the dead girl's face, an act that he claimed sparked his morbid interest in the deceased.
He believed that he could communicate with the dead, that they spoke to him, urging him to rescue them from their eternal sleep. He saw himself as a necromancer, a master of the dark arts, capable of breathing life back into the lifeless. His dolls were not merely macabre trophies, but vessels through which he sought to channel his twisted desires and delusions. Section 8. A twisted desire for family. Another layer of Moskvin's psyche was revealed during the investigation, his deep-seated loneliness and his unfulfilled desire to have children. Moskvin had never married and lived a solitary life, consumed by his studies and his macabre interests. His parents, while loving, were often away, leaving him to his own devices. He longed for companionship, for the unconditional love of a child. His diaries contained heart-wrenching entries expressing his yearning for a family, his despair at his inability to find a wife and have children of his own. He wrote of his desire to protect children, to shield them from the pain and suffering of the world. His crimes, however, were the antithesis of love and protection. In his deluded mind, he had found a way to fulfill his need for a family, to have the children he so desperately craved. He would dress them, care for them, and even celebrate their birthdays, all the while denying the horrific reality of his actions. Section 9. Delusions of Resurrection. Central to Moskvin's delusion was his belief that he could bring the dead back to life. He spent countless hours poring over ancient texts, researching rituals, and experimenting with various chemicals, all in a desperate attempt to achieve the impossible. He believed that he was on the cusp of a breakthrough, that he could cheat death itself and reunite his daughters with their families. He would talk to the bodies, sing to them, and read them stories, convinced that they could hear him, that they were simply sleeping, waiting for him to awaken them. He even constructed elaborate plans to build a special house for his daughters. Once he had perfected his resurrection techniques, his belief in his own abilities was unwavering, fueled by his delusions and his desperate need to believe that he was not a monster but a savior. He saw himself as a tragic figure, misunderstood and persecuted for his unconventional methods. He was, in his own mind, not a criminal but a visionary, a man ahead of his time. Section 10. A Life Behind Bars. In 2012, Anatoly Moskvin was deemed unfit to stand trial and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. The court, recognizing the severity of his mental illness, ruled that he posed too great a danger to himself and others to be released. He was sentenced to indefinite detention, his fate resting in the hands of doctors rather than judges. The news of his crimes sent shockwaves around the world. People struggled to comprehend the depths of his depravity, the sheer scale of his macabre collection. The families of his victims were left to grapple with the horrific realization that their loved ones had been subjected to such unimaginable acts.
While Moskvin was spared a prison sentence, he remains confined to a psychiatric facility, his movements restricted, his interactions monitored. He continues to receive treatment for his schizophrenia, but the prognosis remains grim. The man who once roamed cemeteries whispering to the dead now spends his days in a sterile hospital room haunted by the ghosts of his own making.
Section 11. Global Revulsion and Intrigue. The case of Anatoly Moskvin, the doll maker of Nizhny Novgorod, continues to fascinate and horrify people around the world. It stands as a chilling reminder of the dark side of human nature, the potential for madness to lurk beneath a veneer of normalcy. Moskvin's story has been the subject of countless documentaries, books, and articles, each attempting to unravel the complex psychological factors that led him to commit such unspeakable acts. Some see him as a monster, a heartless ghoul who preyed on the innocent. Others view him as a tragic figure, a victim of his own delusions, a man driven to madness by loneliness and loss. Whatever one's interpretation, there is no denying the profound impact Moskvin's crimes have had on the families of his victims. They were robbed not only of their loved ones, but also of the chance to say goodbye, to lay them to rest with dignity. The pain and trauma inflicted by Moskvin's actions will continue to haunt them long after he himself fades from memory. His case serves as a chilling reminder of the importance of mental health awareness and the need for compassion, even in the face of the most incomprehensible acts.